I just have a lot of other things I need and want to do in my life. So
Mm-hmm.
rat racing all the time is not that fun. So I have to kind of think more about my goals and what I want. And it's weird to say this, but I don't think that it's awkward because locals themselves, two, there's like 1 to 3 decent players. So the thing I enjoy the most is not really super duper accessible to me.
Yeah.
And like I might kill myself before I take net play tournaments more seriously.
Fair. Definitely don't think you should do that.
Yeah. So so I don't know. I think at the very least I would like to put a little more discipline into it and like practice a little more regularly and try to sort of just I don't know adjust my goals and think I think I do like I think I like competition, but not necessarily. It's weird because I've been conditioned to enjoy competition for a result when now I'm more approaching it as like, oh, it's like fun to compete because there's different feelings involved and
Yeah.
it's fun to experience those feelings in that specific context. And like a good example is like I played B-Bats, and I think he's the first player I ever played where his punish really affected my execution. I'm pretty indifferent to that normally, but he's like I've never really faced a peach with a competent edge guard flowchart on Sheik.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like everything. It felt like the stakes of all my punishes were higher than normal, and also like I mean he's good enough that he can reversal a lot. Also in spots that like I have to have good execution, and I hadn't like practiced or thought about peach stuff in a while. So so I got messed up pretty badly against him, and but it was still cool to be like, oh, okay, like I've never played a player who made me feel like I'm strictly worse at executing because he has something, he's competent at something. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've never experienced that before. That was cool. Or like even though I lost to Sheik at best teams, like I've it's been a while since I've played someone who I felt like I genuinely didn't have any good answers to. Um, and that was also fun. And like again, like coming away from the experience feeling like there I could have done more, and that sort of lingering feeling of regret is ultimately cool
Yeah.
and like interesting and worthwhile. It's just what I decide to do about these things should also be equally interesting and worthwhile. Otherwise, I'm not going to maintain any sort of momentum or motivation, and it'll just I'll just rerun the same thing, the same feelings, however many months down the line.
Mm-hmm.
So,
All right.
uh, trying to think of things that really stood out to me. Yeah, I don't know. I think I found some practice items to do. I have some amount of routine structured around them. I think probably the hardest thing. Uh, I think probably the thing that's eluded me always is thinking about ways to practice movement that feels applicable and not like I'm just doing things just to be cool.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty common melee player problem. I thought about sort of doing what Laudandus used to do and just like try to exactly replicate top player sequences and just use that as a good baseline. And I think that that works, but I also uh, working backwards from that is kind of hard sometimes. Like it's like learning having the tech skill to replicate their sequences is good. It's just I also feel like I have to know why they're doing it, and it's not always super clear
Yeah. That makes sense.
either. So I don't know. I think probably the topics for lesson today are just sort of uh, just to figure out like I think we've talked about it before where but it'd be good to go over again like effective practicing, what it looks like, uh, how my personal feelings and goals factor into that, and then whatever is left over with the time, we can talk a little bit about the Sheik Ditto because I really have I think I have lost to like 5 or 6 like 1 and 2 level Sheiks on. Okay, that's a little bit harsh, but like I've lost to Sheiks that only have tech skill and nothing else
Mm-hmm.
on ranked, and then that's probably a good sign that I don't really have a good idea of what I'm doing in the matchup. So
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Well, I mean, do you want me to lead or?
Yeah, I would like to hear your thoughts on kind of practicing. I think the last time we talked about it, you just said pick situations from a video, test them, see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. I guess to get more into that, um, let's just start with a VOD, and then I will pick a single situation that seems interesting, and then we could go through like the process of like both like what's the word? Fuck. The word for where you get something and then you separate it from everything else. I forgot the word, and you only look at that thing. Um,
Compartmentalize.
something like that. You know what I'm saying, where it's like,
Segregate, not the best word.
but get a situation and then separate it from all the unimportant things and look at
Isolate.
the action. Isolate. There you go. That's exactly isolate. Yeah, isolate. Practice isolating the situation, and then and then figuring out how you'd want to think of it, and then switching to the game aspect of playing. How do you practice it, and then what parts of the practice are important for making sure that you're actually like getting it.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay, cool. Let me start streaming.
Let's see if I can characters. I'm using vods.co might be more helpful in this instance because you can just.
You could do that. I just went to YouTube and looked up Plop for Sheik, and I've ended up on a VOD of him versus V2 King.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that showed up. So.
Bog champ. Okay. Sure.
Also, I guess as a question, if we are gonna end up talking about the Sheik Ditto at any point, what like level of confidence I guess you have in it? Do you want to like start at like the super duper basics and then build up? Because I could start that here.
I think what we usually do is we sort of talk about my baseline understanding, and then we sort of iterate from that to the basics, and then we branch off from there.
Okay.
I think Sheik jumping is just like I have no idea how to deal with it. Short hopping especially. I mean, like short hopping alone is annoying to deal with, but then like you add all the platform stuff, and then it becomes very annoying. It's like I can't F tilting Sheik for short hopping is impossible. It just feels so hard. Like you can do it if you're really close and you like it feels like to me you can do it if you're really close and you read them super hard, but otherwise like it's pretty difficult. And then it's like okay, so maybe I want to stay close to Sheik after she's done fairing, but then like I don't really have a good idea of how to play that mix up either. Like I don't know how to preempt her. I don't know how to play the after fair situation. And then sometimes the Sheiks will go to platforms and then it will be like then it gets even more confusing because there's more distractions involved. And I think like edge guarding and recovery might be the only things I have a small idea on, and those happen to be really important aspects of the matchup. So it's like I win if the Sheik doesn't know how to edge guard and doesn't know how to edge guard me. And then if they figure out that I don't know what I'm doing in neutral, it's like pretty annoying.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, I guess I have a few thoughts about Sheik on the ground and dealing with Sheik jump or whatever. F tilt in this matchup compared to the other matchups is probably the worst.
Yeah.
Mainly because I think at a baseline, Sheik is okay with being on the ground against herself because she has crouch. CC is the obvious thing, but also I think the fact that her crouch is so low that it makes Sheik's jump interact with it pretty awkwardly. And so you can't like jump fair super easily if the dude's just crouching. Or Bear. I don't know if Bear hits crouching Sheik, the latest Bear. I know it doesn't hit Puff, but I don't know how low. I assume it does hit Sheik because it's pretty close against Puff. But that's the
Yeah.
latest possible bear. Um, late
It has the
Nair
same
did CC for a
awkwardness
long time.
as the bear, as it has the same awkwardness as the bear versus Puff does. Like she just gets so low to the ground that, like you know, it gets. I think it's like my general sense is that every like 2 out of 10 bears I hit very low to the ground, it hits.
Yeah. Like I don't think bear's that great. Nair CC or get CC and up airs, fake move. And obviously empty line stuff exists, but like I
Yeah.
think Sheik being on the ground is a strong position for herself. But then that, begs the question that you're talking about. How do you deal with them like maneuvering on the ground? Because obviously jumping it doesn't feel that comfortable. Forward tilt doesn't feel very good. But then that's where I think platforms come in. Is if the other dude's on the ground, then you get to go to platform, and then that's like they fight to get you off the platform, and then you reset, and then something like that's kind of like the natural like progression is you're both on the ground. Maybe you'll make a read and hit them out the air. The risk reward on that isn't that great because CC's always on the table, and if you get grabbed, you're getting chain grabbed. Um, and then one person goes to the platform. Maybe they get a read as someone going up there, or maybe they get red and then they get hit, and then it continues.
Yeah.
And I think that is like the super duper general way to view it. But I think the things that it's saying is that like Sheik has very few situations where she can actually safely interact with herself because of CC, and kind of what that means for the matchup is like you have to ignore 70% of the things that happen, and if you don't, you're risking getting grabbed, and you could risk getting grabbed. That's a part of the game. You have to play a mix up, obviously, but knowing that there's inherent risk to interacting with yourself, I think is, I guess, important. And like putting it through the lens of there are options that are just not on the table generally, and then the things that are on the table, right? Does that make sense? Hello?
1 second. Let me call you right back from my phone because I realized that I am using a headset mic, but there's a speaker, so then the lesson might have audio feedback.
I don't hear
So,
anything.
oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess in that case. Oh, because then you would be able to hear from mine.
Yeah, I can't hear myself through your
Okay,
mic.
that makes sense. No, I think that makes sense. I think the part where I think the general structure, um, I think when you mentioned crouch cancel, that feels weird to me because I don't know, I don't see how crouch interacts with her. Like, it makes it awkward to fair Sheik, but it doesn't make, but like, how do I put it? If I CC a Sheik fair, I don't really feel like I'm getting anything meaningful off of it.
Um, do you not feel like you have an advantageous mix up? You have grab. Dash grab is always on the table. And Sheik doesn't have, it's not like Sheik has a shine that she can do after the fair. And so it's like she hits the fair, she's relegated to like spot dodging, jabbing, or being okay with getting grabbed and then doing a movement option like dash back, assuming it's not like
Doesn't
super duper
doesn't
spaced.
the fair push me far enough back that I can't get the?
If you're true crouching, no.
Maybe I didn't, dude. I tried crouching versus SDMs and it didn't work. And I wonder if it's because I just wasn't true crouching or if I wasn't like holding down to sin or whatever.
You might have bad text. It might be faster than you think, right?
That's true.
There's like a bunch of things, but like it should be on the table if you're actually.
You know what? Also, can she not jump again? Jump squat is 3 frames, right? So like, but if like, I guess if she's hitting the low, yeah, no, this is something I can test, I guess.
If she's
Like,
hitting soup, I guess like. So I think with like maybe the latest possible fair, she. I mean, we could test this honestly right now. I could boot up the game
sure.
because I don't know exactly how it works. Um,
Yeah, I'm not trying to be pedantic or annoying about this, by the way. It's just like I think it's like I thought crouch was really good too, but I didn't have maybe I had bad tech skill or I just didn't have a good idea of how it worked or
just do this.
Yeah.
And then... I assume that's close to perfect tech skill.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Then 1 off. Okay, that's like a pretty normal late fair, you know? And then...
Oh, okay, yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Like,
And
you have
even
enough
as
time to even...
percent goes up, like, my pushback might increase slightly, but I still have a mix-up on the table. Like, they have to do something about the third grab.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
I also, like,
well,
we could also... we could do a different spacing, too, so...
Oh, sure.
Yeah, like, it doesn't have to be... That should be super duper spaced. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty
drift
spaced.
back. Drift back late fair. Okay, I see.
Yeah, like, it should... I don't think jump can get out, but obviously, like... I think...
It's still something I would have to practice from the looks of it. It's like
Yeah, you definitely do need to practice it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that helps a lot. It's, right, so crouching interacts well with Sheik's jump, but then, like, okay.
But I do think also, like, this is why, you know, there's still a big step which he jumps or whatever. You can't just, like, autopilot crouch. There's also this, which is super fast, right? And I don't think you can grab before the nair.
Yeah.
Or before the jab or spot dodge. And so it's like, she does have, like, mix-ups, but... I mean, I guess it's like, the way that I see it is, I think if you're just like, you run up, and then you just see a Sheik crouching, or I guess more like, if you run up and you crouch, and then you see the Sheik jumping, or not even that you see her jumping, more that you're just like, I'm gonna wait for her to jump. I don't think that's a good strategy. But I think if, like, you run up, and you incidentally see that the Sheik is jumping, crouching will always end up going pretty well.
Okay, yes, that seems to make sense. I think the former is what I had in mind in my set or whatever, and that went really poorly.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, then that makes it really clear that all I'm trying to do is crouch, and then he gets to, you know, pick in advance.
Yeah.
Or what have you. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Also, I guess, or tilt. I do think this happens, so if you're super point blank, that's something to be super aware of, is
this
that.
happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
This shit is so annoying.
So if you're going forward tilting, you need to make sure that you're actually, like, not letting this happen, you know? Yeah. Or maybe you do, I don't know. Maybe you don't, who knows? But probably if you're going to forward tilt, be, like, pretty intentional with the spacing, right?
Yeah, make sure that the lower edge of the foot is hitting her as it's sweeping up and you're not just aiming, like, for the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you are right that it is not super intuitive, that, like, 70% of things don't matter, and it's kind of about how good you are about interacting with fair.
Mm-hmm.
And going to the platforms, and yeah, I think I don't have a good idea of how needles work in this matchup either. Edgeguarding and recovery seem okay. Like, I mean, it's hard to kill. I feel like it's hard to outright kill Sheik as Sheik.
Yeah.
There's some ways you can do it, but it's mostly about rinse and repeating, and then having a good flowchart, and
I guess you mentioned that you don't know, or you don't understand needles. I get what's, like, the problem, because I feel like it should function pretty similarly to the other matchups where you needle, where it's like, I'm far away, so I might as well press the B button, and it has the added benefit of, like, against characters like Marth or Sheik, where if they jump, they kind of get locked and either have to eat the needle or go to the platform, which is, like, fine. I guess in the Ditto, there's the added thing or the added part of like, oh, you could also needle, and so then it becomes a game of like what plane you're playing on. Like there could be a Sheik on the side platform, a Sheik on the ground, both charging needles. And it's like a game of who's gonna go up or go down. But I think in that spot, the person on the ground still has the advantage because they could always stop charging and then traverse across the ground, right?
Yes, that makes sense.
But otherwise, it's the same thing of like, I'm forest on needle, or I'm gonna do diagonal needles to from like a higher point vertically to stop them from moving forward. You know?
Yeah, I think I have a hard time stopping diagonal needles in a way that where like I feel like I'm flowing from one position to the other. I guess
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how else to explain it other than that. Like I think I have a hard time stop both like dealing with the diagonal needles and getting them to not throw them in the first place, and also like okay, if they throw them, really playing the next position well. I think those are the things that sort of trip me up.
Yeah. Well, I guess one thing to use the VOD is if you look at their starting positions, this is about the spot you want to be if the other Sheik's on the side platform. Because
Okay.
if they jump, you can see that they jumped, and you can freely decide, I'm going to move forward and then be able to pressure their landing. You either want to be here so you actually have the time to see them jump and then run forward to not get hit by these needles, or you want to be right outside that range, and then once you see that they jump, wait until they throw the needles to be able to transition to that spot.
Okay.
And so that's like how to deal with diagonal needles is you have to look at where you are relative to the arc of their jump, right? Because when they jump, they can only shoot the needles at whatever direction or at whatever angle. So you have to like pay attention to where they are, and then imagine a line, and then either be below the line, so you could do that, or maybe at the line where the needles would land,
I guess
or
it helps too
behind
that
it.
she has to jump before throwing the needles.
Yes,
So
because
that
these
gives a
needles don't
cue.
do anything.
Yeah, the runoff needles and the horizontal needles don't. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about diagonal needles.
Got it.
Now, here's the first mini game. Hitting the other Sheik on the platform.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. This is just a read. He empty landed and he wanted to read Sheik doing shield drop or something, but I don't know why he didn't just up tilt afterward.
Sure.
So it's like you could either hit them and assume that they're not going to be shielding on the platform, or you could not hit them directly and then do something like an up tilt or CC under the platform to read the shield drop. Yeah, let them fall into you. There's also like
Could they also go top here too, I guess?
oh, what's up?
Could they also not go top from this position?
They could, but does that like I don't think that's immediately relevant to you, right? Because it's not like the only way that you get to hit
from him going to top.
Yeah, he can't hit you for going top, and you can't really hit him without throwing your life away. Like you could full hop, double jump up, fair to read him going to top, but if he runs to the ground, you're getting up tilt grabbed a million times out of a million or something.
Yeah. Okay, I understand.
Yeah. Nice. This is fine. Yeah. So I think one thing about jump is that if Sheik jumps into you and would have any reason to do like a not early option, which is likely, right? Because they want to hit you crouching, or at least have reasonable timing against you crouching. You could just swipe them out the air, and then you get to play a mix-up of reading them holding shield when they land, reading a spot dodge after they land, or jumping again to just get shield pressure, but have reasonable, like you could react to defensive options they make, right?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Here, tried to grab. Unlucky with down smash. It just crouched under the grab. So, whatever. Yeah, it's the mini game. No one wants to be on the ground. And so, I'm uncomfortable, so I'll go to side plat. BT King makes space for him jumping forward. I mean, that fair is pretty random, honestly. But Plep realizes, comes down, but doesn't, like, commit to a hard action on the ground. Because if you commit to a hard action on the ground, you can get grabbed for it always. It doesn't it could be like the least relevant situation ever, and the other Sheik might just decide I want to boost grab, and you'll get hit. So that's something to also be aware of. Is that like you don't get to just like willy nilly zone on the ground, you know, because there's always the risk of getting chain grabbed.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you do to win that interaction probably wouldn't be as good as getting a chain grab.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah.
Get him in the corner. He just. Oh, he won the mini game, and then Mewtwo King decided to like go to the edge, so that way. I don't really.
Mewtwo King just did something random. He double jumped, and so Plup was able to pressure him, and then he ended up in the corner. It just like I don't know. I don't really have any thoughts on that.
Sure.
This is pretty good. Up
I'm
till.
surprised he didn't JC grab the landing from here.
Do you think he could have? I feel like he.
Maybe not. Yeah, it's kind of late.
It's like I don't think it would have hit, especially since Mewtwo King had good defense.
Yeah, he had DI'd away and then air dodged out of it and wave landed.
Yeah, like seeing that hit, I'd be like, oh, I don't know. But if he like didn't DI it well, then I'd probably think differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think this forward tilt is pretty greedy. This could go wrong horrifically. Because from the opposite Sheik's perspective, I think they might jump because they don't want to get grabbed, and jump would go over grab. Or, you know, they could just stay on the ground and crouch in case a forward tilt like that happens, or the other Sheik jumps, which I think are more likely than getting raw grabbed. And so I feel like a lot of the time, Plup should probably be getting grabbed for doing that forward tilt. Obviously, he gets fair, and that's like fine, but like, I don't think this forward tilt's very good. I think
what's funny is if I'm
go?
Mewtwo King in this position, I for some reason, I think I have a tendency to dash away a lot in this matchup, but I guess it's not really that productive because it just gives the other Sheik more space, and like it just gives her more room to fair or take space freely.
Yeah.
There's no real utility to her. There's no real utility to me dashing back in general.
I agree. I think if you're gonna move backward, probably wave dash back. I think dash back is fine if your goal.
Like whipping F tilts a lot either against me. It's like it's one thing if I'm dashing back, like sometimes you can dash back and then whip punish or whatever, but she's not F tilting in this matchup. So.
Yeah. Actually, while we're here, we could use this situation as an example for like isolating a situation and then thinking about it and then like being able to study it. Yeah. So we could look at it like this. Yeah, we could just say this is a situation. Right. Sheik on the left has frame advantage. Sheik on the right is getting out of lag. But Sheik 2 on the right is getting out of lag fast enough to be able to like do an action, right? And so I see the situation as, okay, it's relatively close to neutral. They're close to each other. There is no like inherent advantage everyone has, right? And what I'm thinking of is, okay, if the other Sheik is in the corner, at least Sheik on the right has positional advantage. And if they're relatively close in like frame time, then I would think that, okay, so the options for the Sheik that have frame advantage, I think the Sheik can obviously do something defensive, right? They could crouch, and why that's relevant is for all the reasons we talked about before: jump, forward tilt, whatnot, right? Or I think they could jump because they don't want to get grabbed, the thing that we talked about already. And since they have frame advantage, they have the time to do that, right? And so it's like it makes sense that they could jump, or they could like wave dash back and create more space between them, but maybe they wouldn't want to do that because they don't have stage positioning, right?
Yeah.
And then from Sheik 2's perspective, they're like, okay, well, I just whiffed. I think I don't want to get, whiff punished instantly, even though I know that isn't going to I don't want to just like get hit for no reason. So it's like they could forward tilt to defend themselves. Maybe the Sheik would dash them forward. That is technically on the table, though not like likely. the Sheik could hold down, and so then they'd maybe want to like jump and then play some mix up around like super late nair or short hop empty land, or um they could choose to shield, spot dodge, jab, some action like that that would prevent them from just run up grabbing, but isn't as committal as forward tilt, right?
Sure.
Um, and so then I guess we have a bunch of options, but why do any of them matter? And I'm like, I think the main things that you don't want to happen for either Sheik is no one wants to get grabbed.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And so for the Sheik with advantage, grab is obviously more on the table because they have frame advantage, but they don't want to just throw to grab. Even if they have advantage, they know they don't have enough time to hit them before a spot dodge or something.
Sure.
And so if they're wrong, they'll get grabbed. And so they're probably going to stray away from doing that. Forward tilt, actually, honestly is pretty reasonable, but still could go poorly because the other Sheik might just decide to hold down. Mm-hmm. And so I probably wouldn't want to deal with that, but it's also completely on the table. I also would think from Sheik on the left's perspective, I don't really see a reason why the other Sheik would jump, so I'm less inclined to forward tilt because they don't have frame advantage, right? And I guess also just to lay out something is if they both jump, whoever has frame advantage essentially wins, right? Yes. And so since Sheik 2 doesn't have it, the likelihood of them doing that goes way down. And so then that kind of leaves, you could CC, and that gives you the most freedom, and you have the least likelihood of getting grabbed. That means they have to make the hardest read, right? Mm-hmm. Right. Or, I mean, it's pretty much crouch or jump. It's like those are the two things I'd want to pick the most from the Sheik on the left perspective because of all the things that the other Sheik could do, and me also not wanting to get grabbed, right?
Right.
And then Sheik on the right, it's like I don't have frame advantage, so I have to stay on the ground. And since I am behind, there is a much higher likelihood that they would just run up grab. And so it's like I would want to, I probably wouldn't want to hold shield because I don't really care about them just hitting me out my crouch or something because I'm at 13%. Or I'm honestly not really that worried about getting hit at all at 13%. Right. I don't want to jump, and I don't really want to run up grab either. And so it's like, if that's the case, I could either throw out a move, forward tilt jab, or I could spot dodge. And that's like about it, Sure. And so then we have the main set of options for each Sheik. Sheik on the left being crouch and jump. And then Sheik on the right being shield or fast move, jab, forward tilt. And so then we've essentially mapped out like all the relevant things that could be happening in this situation. And so then I think, we could go on to, I don't know if this is necessarily a situation where you need to set up a replay for it, because at the end of the day, it's more about knowing it than executing it. It's not like a mix-up in that way, I guess. And so then, I guess the takeaway that we'd probably want is what are like the overarching themes that this would like tell us to give us more context for other aspects of the matchup. And I don't have anything on mind right now, honestly, but that's like kind of what you'd want to be looking for. And you don't even have to like explicitly think of it while looking at a situation, but you do have to like feel a vibe from it, The situation feels a certain way for either Sheik. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what's hard for me is distilling the like independently. When you say all these things, they make sense in my head. It's like, oh, okay, like for example, the left Sheik. The left Sheik is the one that's slightly frame advantage, right?
Yes. Or wait, the Sheik. The left Sheik has frame advantage. Right Sheik is disadvantageous.
Like red Sheik is frame advantage, and like, but they also like it's like red Sheik gets frame advantage, and they would like to get a grab, but it's also kind of spooky to do it because if it goes wrong, then they can also get grabbed. But they also they also have some amount of meaningful frame advantage that they can play the situation with. And then the right Sheik is like slightly on the back foot,
but also has a lower percent, so it doesn't really care that much about getting hit, but also still wants to not get grabbed.
Yeah.
So, but I think past that, it's hard for me to again like distinguish. Okay, like what are the things that I'm trying to, if I'm taking this to practice and try to develop some amount of practice ideas around, like, um, I think I agree with your assessment that I would like to practice in a way that addresses the themes, but again, like sort of distilling the sort of specifics in this situation to practice is a little hard for me still. Outside of again setting it up in Unk Punch and like sort of cycling through the options and being tedious in that way.
Yeah. In that case, I think, and this goes for most situations, but it really just comes down to horizontal spacing and frame advantage. And if you want to practice that in the match, you'd sit down and you'd play, and then you'd pay attention to every single time that you and the Sheik are at a certain range and there's a certain frame advantage or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that would like be the way to practice, I guess, fleshing out your understanding of it with nuance or whatever. But like those are the two most important parts of this situation, and it's probably going to be the two important parts of almost every situation that comes up in this matchup. Off the just that there's a single threat that no one wants to deal with ever. Just that single threat, right?
Right.
Yeah, that is, and so we could honestly find another situation. Actually, yeah, the fair situation right after works. Okay, fair. Sheik on the left still has frame advantage, but for reasons mentioned prior, it's similar in the sense that run up grab is still on the table. Like she could just do dash
Boost
for one
grab.
frame grab or something, and then it would hit, or boost grab, and the other she could spot dodge it.
Yeah.
It's actually nearly the exact same situation, except
the farther spacing.
Yeah, except jump, I think, is no longer on the table for Sheik on the left.
Right, because the jump, you have to drift too far and all that shit.
Yeah, it would take extra time. And so then there's also, I guess, the added benefit of, since you're further away, dashing is now on the table to replace jump because you could use your dash to avoid grab or whatever, right? And so Reach King dashes back, also with the intention of avoiding grab, but then being able to whiff punish a forward tilt that Sheik or Plup would do to defend himself in the same way he did in the first situation, right?
Yeah, and to be clear, like the F tilt protects Plup from getting raw grabbed, right?
Yeah. It
and then
kind of does, not really, because theoretically
he can crouch.
Mewtwo King should be holding down to grab it, so like it doesn't actually, but like in the practical sense of melee, people are gonna forward tilt there, and you have to crouch it. But you probably shouldn't forward tilt there.
Yeah, like because if the other guy's ready, then the risk reward is horrendous.
Yeah, you should just roll away or spot dodge if you're really like, I don't want to get grabbed, because hitting jump out the air is horrible risk reward here. You don't, it just doesn't like matter. And so that I guess brings around the point that I was making, where it's like, I think there's like 80% of the things you could do probably aren't things that you want to actually be doing. And when you watch a bunch of Sheiks play the matchup, they're going to do those things over and over and over, and they should be getting grabbed, or at least could be, but they almost never will. And this is one of those situations where it's like, I don't think this forward tilt actually fits into the mix-up, but like people will play as if it does.
Doesn't it seem like an easy way to win the matchup at a higher, like even for somebody who's much lower skill than XYZ players, is like to be extremely good at those situations where I could get a grab and just be really good at them?
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think people do that. But I think that is absolutely a strategy you could do. And that's just playing the mix, or the what's it called? Playing the matchup correctly. The whole matchup should be like a game of like you running around and then realizing the position isn't actually that great for you to like make a proactive decision, and then doing something to change it without being direct, you know? And you just repeat that until you get your fair out of the air, or you get your boost grab on a forward tilt, or your boost grab on a dash back or something, right? Like that, you just repeat that until you get like, I think it boils down to situation. There are a few situations where someone has to make a decision that might potentially, I mean, this could be one of those positions, honestly, but a position where someone has to make a decision that could potentially end up in them getting grabbed, even if they don't want to. And those are the spots that you're going to pick out and like play.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think can we sort of talk about a little bit? I know this sort of hasn't really come up yet. Um, what is the sort of counterplay to fairing that isn't just crouching it? Like I think because when you watch Sheik Dittos, it's not like the Sheiks are not just taking turns fairing and crouching. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Well, I mean,
like I'm not necessarily just talking about the fair itself, but like what happens
yeah.
For example, I actually could not even tell you what the standard Sheik behavior after a fair is. Like I don't even have that baseline. And of course, if it's more productive for me to just go watch videos myself, I can just do that. But like I would think that like generally sort of Sheiks they either jump then jump again, or they sort of get their fair and then they go to the side plat, and that's it. I can't really think of any other things that they tend to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much for them to do just because fairing in this matchup is actually pretty high risk. Because it's like, they can't dash back, they can't really forward tilt unless the other person's jumping. There's, nuance there. Jabbing just blows. Fair jump is technically on the table, but for a whiff punish attempt, you're just gonna get grabbed. Like it's not fast enough. You don't get high enough fast enough.
Yeah.
And like obviously fairway dash back is too slow.
Yeah.
And so it's like I don't even think fairing is very good in this matchup. And so it's like I kind of think if you're gonna be fairing, it should like be in response to something, or like it should either be in response to something. So like Sheik jumps and you're like, I know she wants to hit me and she's gonna do a delay action. So I'm just gonna catch her. Yeah, or something like that, right? Or like, oh, she's already on the platform, so I get to fair for free. Or it's like you're close enough to where Sheik would want to start using moves like forward tilt, and so then you could jump over the forward tilt, and then maybe late fair. Still not the best risk reward because holding down, but also you still get to empty land, play a mix up or something like that,
falling
right?
Needle, I guess.
Yeah, falling needle is also on the table if they're CCing.
Sure.
And so it's like I don't think jumping is even, or short hop fairing does not really have a place. I think back air actually has a place. I think back air is great for just sniping jumps. You get to be really far away, and since you don't have to dash back, you're already facing, backwards. It's a lot harder to grab bear because, obviously it's bigger and you don't have to spend as much time moving. So I think, but it also bear is a lot worse at hitting the ground. So
yeah,
I just don't get to interact with the dude on the ground unless you're needling. Unless you're needling or like reading them, you really don't get to like do it like that,
Yeah.
At least that's how I feel.
Sure. So this sort of similar fair situation happens again, and then
yeah, actually, we could use, since we're getting later into the lesson, we could use this as a situation for like I'm going to, as like something to set up. And so it's like, oh, you hit the fair, you hit the fair on the Sheik at like pre-knockdown percent, and they DI it away. What are you going to do? We could set that up right now, actually.
Yeah.
That's like an example of a situation that like...
And that situation happens a lot in the matchup.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's because the Sheik is true crouching and preventing this kind of thing, well, that's a slightly different situation, but anyway, like, yeah, like this situation just happens a lot.
Yeah. So we could just do 7 to 15%, and then yeah. Cool. And so then, you could like fair like this, and then you could think, what are the things that are on the table, right? I don't want to run up grab like this after the fair because I could get spot dodged.
Yeah.
I don't want to like um. I mean, you could also do the Kalakruto and then do like something like that, right?
Oh yeah. Interesting. Yeah, he does do that a lot.
Yeah. And that's like good to read spot dodge and then still have visible pressure.
Yes.
Or you could like, you know,
Like I think when I see this fair, it's like I have trouble coming up with aggressive actions after this because it's as you said, it's like if I dash forward, my sort of credible threats are boost grabbing versus fairing again, pretty much.
yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a position where you need to be aggressive, though. That's like kind of...
I do the one fair and then I just like stay in place, or...
You just get to wait. Because it's like... So, the way... And I think this is pretty common for this matchup, but like... You hit this fair, and you could just like... walk forward. And...
Yeah.
If you like, you know... set up this Sheik...
Weird game of chicken.
Something like that, right? So then it's like... I think DIY on it, actually. Sure, something like that. And so then, you know, you have the Sheik fairing, and then you could practice run-up grabbing after the forward tilt or something. Like, they have to defend themselves, you know? You get to do your VATs, right?
Yeah.
Or something. Like that, this is like, I guess... I mean, if you're gonna like set up a situation to practice, you do the thing in the VOD where you sit there and it's like, what are the qualities of the situation? And so then what are the things that people are gonna do most? And then you'd go into like Uncle Punch or whatever, and then you'd like set up them doing the most expected results so that you could familiarize yourself with it. And then you'd go into a match, and then you'd like try and like, once you realize that the situation is gonna happen, once you get to, or once it comes up in the match or whatever, and then you try and play that to the best of your ability. And then you see like the weird nuances that you can't see while testing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, talking about how, I guess, to practice has, over time, I've definitely struggled more with it because I think my process has changed a bit, but I think the main like important takeaways are like what you're talking about at the very beginning of the lesson of just like seeing the person do something and then copying it is like probably the most correct way to go about doing it until you have like a super large repertoire.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like even just without even looking at a situation, just picking options is really good because then you have enough options that we're like, if you do enough of those options well, then once you come down to like the actual situations, it's way more like concrete, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like if I have a large, if I like, even if I don't know how to use all the tools, having practiced a large set of the toolbox means that whenever I think the tool is appropriate, I just get to apply it to the situation. I don't have to think about any of the other stuff.
Yeah, and I think,
Or sorry, sorry, the other way around. I only have to think about the nuances of why to use it, and not necessarily the executional aspects because I've already built up the tools or whatever.
yeah. And I think doing that and being aware of like the implications of the things that you're doing, and you'd learn that through experience or whatever, that will be like the guiding factor in looking at like the nitty gritty of these types of situations or whatever, right? Because that will like, okay. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we have only a little bit left anyway, but you're saying remind me of what you were saying before I had to go.
I was saying I think using when you pick the like the big just cool things to take from top players is you should obviously once you do them enough you'll learn like what the like implications I guess of that action means for like the greater matchup. And so like something you'll see is, you know, what's an example? I guess if you're watching Plop or something, you'll see him do something like this. He'll waveland the side plat, and then he'll fucking I don't know. He'll waveland throw these needles, and it's like okay, cool. I throw those needles, and if they jump, they get hit or whatever. But then like the overall takeaway that would kind of mean for the matchup is it's like when the other Sheik is on the side platform, that kind of means that they get to control the air. They get to control all like this big box of the platforms or whatever, right? And so then you as a Sheik on the ground don't get to do this or anything. You have to like run around and then you get to jump once you're close, you know?
Sure.
And so like, yeah, when you take those options and you like do them and you learn how they work, your goal is to find larger takeaways from the matchup to like qualify other things that happen. And then when you look at the nitty-gritty situations, you'll be able to be like, oh, I understand that like these are the things that Sheik is worried about because of the information from those other situations.
Sure.
Okay.
I think that's about it. I think that seems reasonable. I think to recap, it makes sense that Sheik jump is actually kind of risky in the matchup. It's a kind of counterintuitive matchup because a lot of you iterating on your advantages, especially before knockdown percents, is just waiting. The flow of the matchup is even more important than normal because of how hard it is for Sheik to get meaningful advantages with it, especially also, you know, grab's a big deal. Like, and you know, just going through some more of the details, like F tilt is not very good against Sheik, and so like dashing back against herself is not very strong. Like needle situations work as normal. Trying to think of the other things that we went through. Like relative frame advantage stuff is really important in this matchup because it's the only time you really get to interact. Many times in the matchup, I have to ignore a lot of the things that seem tantalizing or useful just because you could get grabbed if things go wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's about it, I think.
Okay. I do think this matchup will definitely be harder to learn than the other ones, just because I don't think you'll have the best like guidance from watching other Sheiks play it, because along the way you'll probably pick up things that like aren't very good, or not. It's not that they aren't very good. I guess it's that they have high volatility and they could just go wrong and you might get grabbed, and so then you'll play against like a Sheik that you're supposed to be better than, and then like over the course of the set you'll lose 4 stocks to one of like those types of situations.
Dude, every single one of my sets versus Ben is like that.
Yeah.
It's like I am doing pretty well for the most part, and then like I just lose anyway, but it doesn't feel like I got severely outplayed. Yeah, like it just doesn't feel like I had a but in contrast, it's like I played Griffin, and it's like, dude, this was impossible. So.
Yeah, and so it'll definitely take a lot of like individual thinking and like.
Okay.
You could probably also just watch Sammy lessons. He probably has useful things on it too.
There's a few, I think.
Yeah, I know we didn't get to talk about like edge guarding, but to be completely honest, Sammy stall. And then when they have an ability, you can double jump down air, or you nair, and then if they onto tech, you grab, down throw. If they DI out, you run off there. If they DI in, you get to re-grab again. And then if you have to turn around, you back throw. and then you do the same thing, and if they get close, it's like essentially edge guarding Marth, but he can't go as low. You just Sammy stall until he gets on the stage, and then you hit him off with Nair up air or down air. I guess you could technically up air too. And then if they get too close to ledge while you're Sammy stalling, you get to back air them. And Sheik, in the same way that Marth has to worry about you doing something like this, Sheik has to worry about that too. And so then there ends up being a mix-up of like, will they Sammy stall again and stay for invincibility, or were they like, will they go out deeper or whatever? Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much it. It's not super complicated.
Got it. Yeah, I think it tends to work out that it's like if I Sammy stall until it usually just works out to Sammy stall a lot, and then like sometimes I have enough time to try to back air them and get a read, or you know, like you said, double jump down air them onto the level, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, cool.
all right, well, thank you for your time. I will. Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to the replay of this lesson. I'm a little scatterbrained today, but your time is still appreciated. And yeah, dude, it's gonna be so hard to get practice in this matchup. There's just no Sheiks online ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I have to resort to playing like just queuing on ranked or. Okay, that's fine. I'll try to.
Yeah, but the good part is since other Sheiks or most Sheiks are bad at the matchup, you won't have to put in that much effort relative to like Fox or something, where it's just super hard. But it will still be difficult to find people to play.
Yes,
yeah.
that much is true. Okay, well, yeah, I'll let you know how it goes in the coming days. Thanks for the advice on the practice too.
Yeah, no problem. Later.
See ya.